the reason, politically why those cities matter is because they're run by Democrats, right? And so that sets up a kind of battle ahead of midterms versus Democrats on this issue of crime and public safety, even though, as FBI Director Kash Patel said during this press conference, violent crime is at a historic low. That for a number of years it has not been this low, and so that is basically there is a political aspect to this as well.
There's lots of Donald Trump-related news today. From an international perspective, it's all about the Alaska summit with President Putin. On Friday, President Trump confirms President Zelensky, that is, of Ukraine will not be there, and that there will be land swapping going on. Good and bad stuff for both Ukraine and Russia, said Trump earlier. Well, at home, he's also announced that he's deploying the National Guard in Washington, D.C. and placing the city's police under federal control. President Trump says today is Liberation Day for D.C.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States. I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control.
Well, in the press conference, Trump went on to claim that Washington, D.C. has crime more severe than places like Baghdad in Iraq and Bogota in Colombia. It's a bleak portrayal of modern-day America. D.C.'s Attorney General's called the actions unprecedented, unnecessary and unlawful. Well, Trevor Hunnicutt is Reuters White House correspondent who was there in the room during the press briefing. Trevor, welcome.
Hi, good to see you.
It's very good to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, I think we should try to understand exactly what power President Trump has over the kind of policing and authority in Washington, D.C. How does this work?
Yeah, so, this is a question that's really come up because the president's announcement went further than what we expected in terms of the steps that he was taking. So, one, obviously, in terms of the National Guard, the president does have, broad authority to use the National Guard and to deploy them into various places when he sees that there's an emergency that's necessary. He also does, because of this weird structure of District of Columbia, where it's the city of the federal government, has ability to kind of step in and take authority over some local functions as well. And so there is a law that does allow the president to step in and take control of the police department. Typically, that would be for, the law was designed for that to be in very discrete individual cases, like say an active riot or something like that. But the president obviously is pushing that further and pushing the interpretation of that law further to take control of the police department for we don't know how long.
How immediate will this be?
Well, he announced that the Attorney General and various other people that he has appointed will take control of the D.C. Police Department immediately.
Right, gosh, okay, so it's happened already, as he announced it.
Yes.
In terms of the local reaction, how is this playing, I suppose, among local politicians, local people? I was reading one report that even over the course of the weekend it's just passed, that actually there was a far more obvious kind of law enforcement presence on the streets of DC.
Yeah, it was striking that the president made this announcement, and he was behind him were a number of federal officials, people in his cabinet, political allies of his, and no local officials, right? And so this is clearly something that's been done without a whole lot of necessarily involvement of local leaders besides the police department itself. And we didn't see the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, on stage with the president, and she said that this is not a necessary step. The deployment of the National Guard was not a necessary step. We haven't heard from her yet on the police department issue. And she has basically said that there are a range of other things that the federal government could be doing to support the city, including not cutting the budget, the federal budget allocations to the city's public safety issues.
I suppose there's part of this, isn't there, Trevor, which is this is completely Trump's agenda. Law and order has been a huge part of Trump's political project for over a decade now. It's now just a huge part of what he thinks about cities. And this idea of sort of campaigning on tough on crime has been really solid ground for Republicans. And they've got half an eye, don't they, at least on the midterm elections. This is a Republican issue that he is trying to own.
That's right. And, a lot of the cities that are being targeted by President Trump, right, he started with D.C., but then he also hinted during his press conference that maybe Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles might be next. The reason, politically why those cities matter is because they're run by Democrats, right? And so that sets up a kind of battle ahead of midterms versus Democrats on this issue of crime and public safety, even though, as FBI Director Kash Patel said during this press conference, violent crime is at a historic low. That for a number of years it has not been this low, and so that is basically there is a political aspect to this as well.
Should we consider what the potential is of President Trump using the police in this way and deploying the National Guard in this way? You said we don't know how long this will go on for. Could it go on until the next presidential handover, although there may not be one this time, and President Trump at that point may still have the police and the National Guard within federal control?
Well, we don't know. So, I mean, the National Guard is not a law enforcement agency, right? And so they're not prepared to do a lot of the things that we expect to see from local police in terms of walking the beat and writing tickets. And, all of their work has to be kind of supplementary to other law enforcement organizations. We saw in terms of the president's National Guard deployment in California and Los Angeles several weeks ago that, a lot of those numbers were subsequently brought back down when it became clear that there wasn't a lot of work necessarily for those people to do. So we don't know how long the president envisions this policy going on, but even he conceded during his press conference that there might not be a need for it to go on indefinitely.
Okay, Trevor, thank you very much. Very good to speak to you this afternoon. That's Trevor Hunnicutt, who's Reuters White House correspondent, who was at that briefing with President Trump earlier on, which, true to form, went on for quite some time and covered a whole range of issues.
You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say. I've been up here a lot. I've never seen a crowd like this. I think it's becoming a situation of complete and total lawlessness. They love to spit in the face of the police as the police are standing up there in uniform. They're standing and they're screaming at them an inch away from their face. And then they start spitting in their face. And I said, you tell them, you spit and we hit. And they can hit real hard. It's a disgusting thing. I've watched that for years, for 3-4 years. I've watched them. The police are standing, and they're told, don't do anything under any search. So and you can see they want to get at it. And they're standing there, and people are spitting in their face, and they're not allowed to do anything. But now they are allowed to do whatever the hell they want. This dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left city council adopted no cash bail. By the way, every place in the country where you have no cash bail is a disaster. That's what started the problem in New York, and they don't change it. They don't want to change it. That's what started it in Chicago. I mean, bad politicians started it, bad leadership started it, but that was the one thing that's central, no cash bail. Somebody murders somebody and they're out on no cash bail before the day is out. We're going to end that in Chicago. We're going to change the statute. I spoke with Pam and Todd and everybody, we're going to change the statute, and I'm going to have to get the Republicans to vote because the Democrats are weak on crime, totally weak on crime.